Okay, I'll introduce the third speaker. Shall I go ahead?
Please go.
Sheetal Shah, please go ahead with your talk on TE for aorta.
Hello. After evaluation, stenosis and regurgitation, now I invite Dr. Sheetal Shah to speak on TE for aorta. Dr. Sheetal Shah.
Yeah, good evening, everybody, and hope everybody is safe. Everybody is safe in this pandemic with their families. And thank you, Dr. Murli, as every year. So can everybody hear me?
Yes.
It's clear, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll be starting with TE for aorta, and I do not have any industry sponsorships. What I'm going to talk around is introduction, some anatomy, then normal views, and the pathologies related to the aorta. So we know that TEE is useful for a very rapid and an accurate diagnosis of both primary as well as the secondary aortic pathology. Looking at a quick anatomy, what things are involved in assessment of aorta is aortic annulus, sinuses of Valsalva, sinotubular junction, ascending aorta, aortic arch, descending aorta, abdominal aorta. Some of the measurements have been mentioned here, and some of the important points have also been marked. The salient relationships, just a couple of points to make here is aortic root and proximal aorta, they lie within the pericardium, and hence there is always a risk of tamponade. It's a good window for excellent imaging because it's anterior to esophagus and anterior to LA. So remember, RPA is between esophagus and aorta, and trachea and left main bronchus. It will obstruct TE between the distal ascending aorta and the proximal arch. Most of my talk, as well as some numbers and the nomenclatures, are based on these two review and the guidelines, which is as shown here, European Journal, and the other one, the review article on aorta. So what I'm going to do is initially for about say 2 or 3 minutes, I'm just going to run only a normal aorta. So that's just training your eyes to look what is normal before going into what is abnormal or pathologies. So aortic root, it involves the things included in aortic root is annulus, sinuses of Valsalva, and sinotubular junction. And the sinotubular junction, that's the segment that joins to the proximal aorta. Remember, this is the weakest segment. There are 3 sinuses of Valsalva, with the previous speakers have all mentioned that. Sinotubular junction, aortic valve cusps, they insert from the annulus to the sinotubular junction. So dilatation, it will cause cusps to be displaced away from the center, causing the loss of coadaptation, and hence AR, as we heard the previous speaker speaking on it. Ascending aorta, the diameter usually do not exceed 40 millimeters, but a lot of times now we see the dimensions are mentioned in the body surface area in millimeter per meter square. So ascending aorta is up to 21 millimeter per meter square and descending up to 16 millimeter per meter square. Ascending aorta, it extends from sinotubular junction to the brachiocephalic artery. Aortic arch is from brachiocephalic to the left subclavian with its 3 branches. And descending aorta is from left subclavian to the diaphragmatic hernia. With regards to the segmental anatomy, there are 5 zones, zone 0 to zone 4. 0 is ascending aorta to proximal arch to innominate artery. 1 is between innominate and left carotid. Zone 2 is between left carotid and left subclavian. Zone 4 is the curved distal arch to the proximal descending. And zone 4 is the straight part of the descending from T4 level. These are the normal levels, which are normal sizes, which are mentioned here, men and women. And the brackets, it indicates the upper normal limit. Okay, so next couple of minutes, just looking at the normal aorta, normal views before starting to focus our eyes on the pathologies. So I won't speak much commentary on this, and just going through the normal views to have the eyes look at it. Starting with mid-esophageal aortic valve short axis view, we are aware of the utility of this view. Aortic valve long axis view, the previous speakers have gone through the details about the different measurements. Mid-esophageal ascending aortic short axis view, again this is the normal heart. Mid-esophageal ascending aortic long axis view. And the same uses for the short axis as to examine the diameter, atheromas, calcification, dissections. In addition, for the descending aorta, you'll be able to spot the pleural effusion. And that's the long axis of the descending aorta. Upper esophageal arch view in a long axis, looking at the origins of subclavian and common carotid. And in the short axis, where you can actually even see pulmonary valve, main pulmonary artery. Aortic mid-esophageal ascending aortic short axis view, and aortic mid-esophageal ascending aortic long axis view. In the mid-esophageal aortic valve long axis view. Okay, starting with the main part of the presentation, which is about the pathologies of the aorta, and I have looked up into 4 different categories: dilatation and aneurysms, dissections, aortic atherosclerosis, and miscellaneous. Most of my talk will be based very practical and what we are seeing and images captured in the intraoperative settings. I will skip through the lot of the theoretical part. We know the normal size less than 3.5, dilated when more than 3.5, and aneurysmal when more than 5.5. And variety of list is available in all the books looking at etiopathogenesis. So ascending aorta, we start aneurysms in the ascending aorta. They tend to be distal to the sinotubular junctions, and there are various terminologies used depending on the location, etiology, morphology. So fusiform is a sausage-like or a circumferential dilatation, whereas secular is more of an outpouching. So T information, we are looking at the diameter, location and type, diagnosis of AR, severity and valve sparing versus valve replacement, and to rule out dissection. So one of the patients, descending aortic aneurysm, Marfan syndrome. Ascending aorta, we can see a marked dilatation or aneurysm, involvement of sinuses of Valsalva sinotubular junction. An important point to make here is effacement of sinotubular junction. Aortic regurgitation may occur, and if it's a Marfan's syndrome, you're going to remember there might be a mitral valve prolapse before the aortic regurgitation happens. Change of pathology from Marfan's to hypertension, ascending aortic aneurysm, a distinguishing point is normal ST junction. And another pathology of ascending aortic aneurysm, post-aortic stenosis, which is a bicuspid aortic valve. And the distinguishing feature is the aneurysm usually happens much more in the mid-ascending aorta. Coming on to the ascending aortic aneurysms, SOVA or the sinus of Valsalva aneurysm. Most of them are from the right coronary cusps, but it can also happen from or origin from non-coronary or left coronary cusps. And the etiology can be congenital, bicuspid, connective tissue, blah, blah, acquired endocarditis, iatrogenic, all those things. This diagram, it is showing all the 3. So if you see the color coding of green, it's the left sinus of Valsalva, and it may show potential of where it may rupture. The purple one is the non-coronary and the direction in which may go. And the yellow one is of the right sinus of Valsalva aneurysm, how it may go, whether to the RA side or RV side or the septum. So this is the video for the ascending aortic aneurysm, sinus of Valsalva, right coronary cusp. So there's the communication with the adjacent structure, and the classical picture which is described is called as the windsock appearance. So right RCC SOVA, it may protrude into RA. And the large RCC SOVA, it may occlude the RVOT, and then you may have symptoms of RV failure. Sinus of Valsalva aneurysm can also be because of non-coronary cusp, though it's less common. It may protrude through the interventricular septum, or it may sometimes appear as a cyst, as you see here, or it may protrude into the right atrium or even the left atrium. LCC, when it passes through the left atrium, it causes the symptoms and the appearance picture of a LV failure. Aneurysm, it can also be secondary due to infection, called as the mycotic aneurysm. An infection, it will weaken the involved wall and it will dilate, and hence there will be a risk to rupture. It can be secular, it can be discrete, and the walls of the aorta, it will be filled with necrotic debris, sometimes with a thrombus, And the most common is a syphilitic mycotic aneurysm. So that was all about aortic dilatations and aneurysms. I proceed into the second pathology of aortic dissection. And that's the list which I plan to cover. And then we will go for all the videos as well. Again, I'll skip with the time. I will skip the usual morpho-etiology, which is available in all the books, congenital trauma iatrogenic. We are quite aware of the two popular classifications, Debicki's classification and Stanford's type A and type B classifications. And what we are looking for TE information is: one, presence of aortic dissection, intimal flap or intramural hematoma, type of dissection, entry points and exit points if it's possible to identify, aortic regurgitation, pericardial effusion tamponade, regional wall motion abnormalities, pseudoaneurysms, and aortic rupture. So I'm starting with I'll have the pictures for all the dissections, ascending, arch, and the descending. I'll go through those. This is the ascending aortic aneurysm in a mid-esophageal long axis view, also showing the flap, and true lumen and false lumen have been marked and labeled. The same one, looking up into the mid-esophageal ascending short axis view. Again, you can see the flap here. And there is some spontaneous echo contrast, which is seen in the false lumen and the true lumen adjacent to that. Ascending aortic dissection, another one, which shows a flap very clearly seen in the ascending aorta. The flap remains confined into the ascending aorta, unlike the other one. The next one here, it shows, this picture was similarly shown by the previous speaker, and it's aortic dissection flap, and it is passing through the aortic valve even in the diastole. Or in this particular situation, it's completely a circumferential flap, and it's seen very clearly. So from ascending, moving on to the arch, and this is aortic arch dissection. We can see some flow in the true lumen, and false lumen is also identifiable with some amount of spontaneous echo contrast. Descending aortic aneurysm, descending aortic dissection. Again, in the short axis view, a very clearly seen flap, true lumen and false lumen seen here, and plenty of spontaneous echo contrast. We are quite aware in situation of dissection, especially when we are the solo person looking after anesthesia and the TE, sometimes there is not enough time to capture all the images. So if it's always a good if there is a one person who is carrying out echo and you are focusing on the anesthesia. Most of this happen in the night and you are alone at work. Okay, this is the descending aorta in a long axis view, again seeing a flap, and you can make the false lumen and true lumen. The reason I put up this video is there is a communication seen very clearly between the true lumen and a false lumen. Intimal flap, that's the tear in the intima, and it's mobile with the flow of blood. So aorta will be dilated, and the aortic valve, which is below the flap, that gets thickened up, or sometimes it may exhibit like a hematoma with or without a thrombus, and spontaneous echo contrast, if it's present, that will obviously signify stasis of blood. So that's the thrombus and spontaneous echo contrast. It's a similar picture from the previous flap. There are 3 or 4 pictures which I am repeating again same, but only focus is the headlines. I have put it as a true lumen versus the false lumen, as this is quite a common question in the candidates who are appearing for the exam. So remember, true lumen happens during systole. There is increase in the diameter. It's usually more regular in shape, either circular or oval, and usually smaller. False lumen, it will exhibit stasis and hence a thrombus. And it may also have fibrous remnants or sometimes the intimal remnants seen inside. So this one is the ascending aorta flap, which shows true versus false lumen. And this one is the arch, which I had shown the picture again, but now only focusing on the true and the false lumen here. That's the descending aorta in the short axis view, showing the true lumen and a false lumen. Okay, coming on to the next part of the aortic pathologies are the complications here. ST dilatation resulting in aortic regurgitation, aortic cusps or coronary artery involvement, pericardial tamponade, and very rarely or sometimes you may find a thrombus. So ST dilatation, which has been dealt quite well in the previous talk of aortic regurgitation. Aortic cusps, some images were seen, and that can be coronary artery involvement, as we see in the video on the right side of the screen in this slide. Tamponade, a huge one here, encircling completely. And very rarely, some of the senior anesthetists here in their career, they might have seen aortic thrombus quite a few times. The right side of the screen is showing the aortic thrombus. So what are the common procedures which we do? It's the valveless ascending graft. The most common is the Bentall's procedure, which is the interposition technique. Composite grafts, aortic arch grafts, descending grafts, sometimes resuspension of aortic valves, valve sparing versus root replacement, coronary artery reimplantations. Very less commonly, but it's quite, we do quite some, which is the elephant's trunk of the entire replacement. Last couple of years, our center has quite a large number of aortic work. I think roughly we are doing about somewhere between 25 to 30 a year. And this picture showing the Bentall's procedure, it's currently a standard technique, which includes removal of the diseased segment of the ascending aorta, and you replace it with the Dacron graft. The proximal site is often the supracoronary at the ST junction, whereas distal site is proximal to the brachiocephalic artery. There are curved arrows which shows the coronary buttons, and I have put numbers as 1, 2, and 3, which shows these are the potential sites for pseudoaneurysm development in future. That's the Bentall's procedure, and only to highlight here the arrows which are seen in this still image showing the corrugations. So prosthetic graft, ascending aorta with the valve replacement. So prosthetic graft, it appears echodense. It's cylindrical and much more uniform. So post-repair evaluation, you may have sometimes persistent of the false lumen. The dissection might be proceeding all the way to the descending even up to the iliacs. It's not uncommon to see the persistent false lumen. Composite grafts. This is the picture showing with the composite graft along with the mechanical tilting disc valve. The yellow arrow, which is shown in this still image, that is the portion of the graft that is recreated sinuses of Valsalva, and it resembles the shape of the aortic root. The small arrows, which are shown on the right side of the screen, they show the corrugated appearance of the graft. And it's a composite graft, and you can see the mechanical tilting disc prosthetic valve in the bottom image. So moving on to the next pathology for the aorta is the atherosclerosis, which is quite common, and it's more common in the elderly, those with high cholesterol or hypertension, and more commonly seen in the descending thoracic aorta. 5 grades of classification, starting from normal thickening, severe thickening, protruding atheroma less than 5 millimeter, more than 5 millimeter, and motile atheroma. And can add another point in this as a porcelain aorta. So that's the grade 1, which is the bottom left. Grade 2 is seen in the upper right of the image, where we can see this thickening. The grade 3, which is seen in the bottom left image. The grade 4, more than 5 millimeter, seen on the upper right image. It is non-motile. And grade 5, in this video, you can appreciate the motile atheroma. Porcelain aorta. So moderate to severe calcification of aortic root, that's brittle aorta or porcelain aorta, and what it will exhibit as excessive echogenicity. And we can use aortic scanning to confirm, and a lot of times surgeons, when they are onto the aorta, they themselves may, on the inspection, they themselves may comment on it. Last part of the aortic pathologies is the miscellaneous, which includes IABP position, aortic pseudoaneurysm, aortic trauma, aortic thrombus, which I just showed that image, coarctation, and artifacts, which we remember, aorta is very notorious for variety of artifacts. Pseudoaneurysm, it can occur after the rupture of the aorta, which is contained by the extraluminal sac. The wall of the sac, it's not the true aortic wall, but it's the aneurysm that communicates with the aortic lumen with a narrow neck. So it can be filled with all the debris or thrombus, and it may also exhibit a spontaneous echo contrast. Road traffic accident, a rapid deceleration injury may result in a complete or a partial transection of the aorta. Usually the point is ligamentum arteriosum. If it's a total transection, of course it's a straightway fatal. But if it's a BAT, which is a blunt aortic trauma, which usually involves the isthmus, which is the between origin of the left subclavian and the first intercostal artery. The mobile arch here at this point becomes relatively fixed, and hence it's a common point of the breakage. So there might be a hematoma, dissection, injuries to the neighboring structures, lungs, tears. Coarctation, it's the narrowing of the aorta. Either it's before, so that's preductal, or it may be post-ductus. And it may, remember, if that's there, it may be associated with bicuspid aorta or any intra-aortic aneurysms. Artifacts, they are quite notorious and commonly found in imaging aorta, both in ascending as well as the descending aorta. So the picture in the right side, you can see the artifacts due to PA catheters and side lobe artifacts. Artifacts in the sinotubular junction, so severe calcification of sinotubular junction, that's going to result in the side lobe artifact. It looks like a flap of aortic dissection, but usually the intensity will diminish, where if it's an actual aortic flap, the intensity will be same. Also, you can change from the long axis to short axis and confirm. Multipath artifacts, they usually occur when the aortic diameter is more than the LA diameter. And hence, the intimal flap, it looks in the ascending aorta is actually because of the reflection from the LA wall. Mirror artifacts, descending aorta in the long axis view, and then comes the epiaortic scanning is also liable for the side lobe artifacts. And I think that was all to complete with the artifacts part as well. I'm sure there was another topic for artifacts to be covered. So all that I have to cover, and I thank you all for their patience hearing. Thank you very much.